At what point does a woman start to miss you after you've distanced yourself from her? Phase number one is anger. She thinks, "You're going to treat me like that? Fine, fine, we'll see what happens." The second phase is the transition from words to action. That is, if your relationship still has a reserve of strength, you won't fight yet. You might distance yourselves from each other, reduce communication, perhaps ignore each other. But if the reserve of strength is already very low, then everything goes. Accusations, who ruined whose life, talk of divorce, moving back to mom's, and so on. After some time, you calm down, look around, and think, can all this be put back together or not? The advantages that still exist in your relationship become obvious to her, and only in the next phase can her perception of your value grow. The woman might take some steps towards reconciliation, and this growth in value only happens between the third and fourth phases. Before that, it's exclusively destructive. What is the mistake of most normal men? It's that when a woman starts acting out and raising the stakes, throwing out threats in this phase, what does a man think? When facing the prospect of not living with his children, he rushes to do something to resolve the situation, and the man initiates reconciliation. And what does this lead to? It leads to it working once, twice, and a third time it slides, but you don't reach the necessary emotional stage from the woman's side. That is, the idea that she can take responsibility for her mistakes, apologize, come to you, miss you, realize things. That's not our pride. It's not our whim. She receives various hormones here that, in turn, increase the value of the relationship. If you reconcile yourself in a situation where she is 1,000% wrong, then you yourself start to lower your own value. When we distance ourselves from a woman, we're simply trying to provoke a specific biochemical reaction, as a result of which she will start to miss the man and his value will increase. But let's break this down into stages: when it will work, when it won't, and what the duration of this endeavor might be. When you're just getting to know each other, there was no need to distance yourself, in principle. But one day, a man realizes that a turning point in the relationship has already occurred. What is this moment? This is how I would describe it. It's a situation where the woman is no longer in a hurry to reconcile. That is, the woman feels fine when you are in a state of conflict. She can go without communicating. What to do in such a situation? Wait for some inappropriate outburst from her and start distancing yourself. If everything is done promptly, correctly, at the right moment, then, in reality, the issue can be resolved in 7 days. Just 7 days of proper distance, or up to 7 days, and we will return things almost to their original state. Moving on to the third phase, this is when the woman is able to hold a grudge for a long time. As usual, the man phrases it, she won't initiate reconciliation at all. In most cases, either the man approaches, or he slowly starts to just communicate, and gradually, in an unclear, imperceptible way, they reconcile. But there are no apologies from the woman. It's clear that the process will be more complex and longer. The minimum time we'll need for this is a month. That's the minimum, but realistic time frame. 1 month. What can happen within this month? You continue living together, and she just doesn't approach you, and you don't approach her, and that's it. We might be forced to raise the stakes. For example, calmly say, "Listen, this isn't a relationship. Are we just going to live like neighbors and not even say a kind word to each other? Let's try living separately for a while, and then we'll see what to do about it." Perhaps after this event, she will start to perceive the situation differently, and interest will begin to grow. The next stage is a situation where the woman is openly rude, yells, shows disrespect. This can already be called a habit of escalating conflict. That is, the man clearly understands that she doesn't value the relationship, and she's only held by habits and convenience. Yes, sometimes she might hug, kiss, even say a sweet word, but it's not quite what it once was. In such a position, the husband believes that this might work. He clings to her tooth and nail and just hopes that everything will be fine. But it won't be fine. Can you still get out of this situation? Sometimes yes, but frankly, very rarely. That is, in most cases, like the last option, when the woman herself leaves the relationship, it's already a divorce. That is, through a complete realization of the fact of losing a partner. This is a completely different intensity of feelings. Think about it. There's a person close to you whom you might miss if they're in the next house but you don't see them. You'll miss them less than if you imagine they're at the North Pole. Even though it's all the same, you won't see them for a week. It's the very fact of feeling that distance, a purely psychological aspect. The same applies to divorce. That is, with a critical decrease in the woman's perceived value of you, the very fact that you are not yet divorced, that which binds you, can already hinder the growth of your value, and, in essence, the distancing only begins after this has happened. At what point does an ex-wife start to miss you? Not soon, because at first she won't just not care about you, but your value will be at a minus mark. And this is very easily explained. The meaning of a woman's existence after divorce is to prove to herself and to others that she didn't divorce in vain, and everything will be used, instilling pseudo-positivity, communicating with supportive friends, YouTube videos, YouTube psychologists, new subscriptions, thematic books on how to be happy, courses, and so on. And why? Why does she need to prove this so badly? Because the fear and the cost of a mistake are too great. Too great. That is, in reality, when you're depressed, your wife doesn't care. You don't understand the power you possess right now. You have nothing to fear, you haven't made any decisions, but she has. So she will go crazy and wake up and fall asleep every day with the same idea. To prove to everyone, to herself, to you, to everyone, that she lives better than she did with you. At some point, she will feel bad. It's impossible. At some point, the self-resource for this self-deception simply runs out, and you'll find out about it. That is, she somehow tries to get closer to you. The most important thing is not to fall for this. It's important, because if you do fall for it, it's still a facade, there's no real understanding behind it yet, because buckets of tears haven't been shed yet, and only after that, the growth of your value. You shouldn't coldly reject her here. That will also nullify the effect. That is, the reaction should be moderate, calm, and uncertain, and then everything will go well. But the worst case scenario is if a woman loses feelings for a man due to an attraction to another, or due to communicating with another, or the wife directly leaves for another. Why? Because feelings for another man turn off the pain receptors. She doesn't feel pain. She can break up. She can destroy the relationship. She can engage in conflict. She can get a divorce. Well, imagine you're at the dentist, and your whole mouth has been torn apart, wisdom teeth removed, and you're like, I don't feel anything, it's fine, I didn't even notice. And what happens? One day, the anesthesia wears off. Those feelings for the other man will eventually pass, and that's when she gets the full dose of pain all at once, in one moment. It can drive you insane. Immediate memories, understanding what happened, what occurred, the ability to look at all events with different eyes. This is a very difficult state, but all of this only becomes possible with proper distancing. After all, if there isn't any, then you're either available, she has you hook, line, and sinker, and she knows it, by the way, or you've withdrawn in resentment and negativity. Neither the first nor the second will work. But if your wife insulted you, and you insult her back, you thereby nullify her mistake, and she will not feel any guilt for what she did. It's a big mistake to start distancing yourself after you've had a big fight with your wife, because you don't have a firm sense of being right, and the woman doesn't feel that she is the one who is wrong right now. This will work poorly because distancing is not a competition of who can be more offended and for longer. Of course not. Many ask, what determines the effectiveness of distancing? It depends on whether the man tried to behave impeccably in everyday life. That is, if there was such a desire that one could look at you and objectively say, wow, what a husband, then distancing will truly work better. Distance is not a punishment. It would be a mistake to perceive it that way. It's help for a partner who has completely lost their conscience and sanity. That is, we try to bring them to their senses and show the consequences of their actions. And how will your ex-wife come back to you? Well, as we've already discussed, the first phase is indifference. In this phase, nothing good happens or nothing happens at all. The second phase is at least 6 to 8 months, and it's a change in her emotional state. That is, you start to feel that she has somehow moved on a bit, or she has simply become more indifferent, the negativity has gone, or she has even become more positive in communicating with you. The next phase is distancing and approaching. That is some kind of unclear swing. Sometimes she's kinder, then she'll snap. The next phase is provocation. That is, the woman does something, and this can be both a positive or some kind of negative provocation to definitely throw you off balance, to provoke some reaction from you. That is, in reality, she is not indifferent. She is trying to understand what you feel, whether you are worried, whether you remember, what feelings you are experiencing at all. And only the last phase is already concrete actions aimed at reconciliation. Is it possible to regain a wife's interest before divorce while living together? In reality, that no longer depends on you. A wife will initiate reconciliation first only when she dislikes her life prospects. And if she is a sensible woman, she might simply think, what about the children without their father? They'll miss him. It's wrong for the family to break up. And now, do the children have to go to a different kindergarten or school? And if she's not the kindest woman, but at least just reasonable, she should also think, who needs me with 2 children? Who will feed us? And what guarantee do I have that I'll meet a much better man? The possibility of mending relations with your wife before divorce depends mainly not on our actions, but on the woman's common sense. And if that common sense is absent, then divorce, yes, it is indeed inevitable, because she has very few restraining beliefs in her head and a lot of accumulated negativity towards you. Well, for that negativity to dissolve, she needs a divorce. To influence a woman, you need to correctly calculate the dosage of distance. This is distancing, almost imperceptible. You have less involvement in communication, fewer sweet words. This is minimizing shared plans. Unfortunately, going somewhere you planned won't happen. But you even explain to her why, you tell her calmly. Everything is very kind, but there is no warmth, no emotions, no intimacy, no contact, no hugs, no display of feelings. The second phase is all the same, but in-dosed, short phrases. The third phase, by this behavior, it's already clear that something has happened, but you don't want to discuss it. You're subtly hinting, well, figure it out yourself. But the most important thing is that you still maintain goodwill, you still do. And the fourth phase is, most often, some extremely serious transgression on the woman's part. Let's just imagine that the husband found out his wife cheated, but she can't fix herself in half an hour. Of course, in such a situation, we simply minimize communication as much as possible, guided by the principle, why say something if you can write it? We strive to reduce any contact to a minimum. If we can't do it right now in terms of timing, we try to do it as quickly as possible to achieve this, while maintaining some self-control, of course. Otherwise, it will no longer be considered distancing. How to properly distance yourself from a woman. There are 2 classic options here. The first is simply to wait for an inappropriate outburst and immediately, without explanation, implement distance. The second option is to approach her if these inappropriate outbursts have occurred and simply calmly say, listen, things are happening in our relationship that are simply incompatible with its healthy development. You don't want to look for blame or right and wrong. You don't want to explain that I'm leaving because you... No, just say that you're morally tired of it, and you probably are too. Let's just think for a while if it's even worth it, okay? And the calmer you do it, the better it will work in most cases. But the most important thing is to initially decide on the dosage of distance. A bad relationship with a wife is a situation where scammers have gotten hold of your personal photos, are trying to blackmail you, and each time as a final offer say, transfer this amount, and then there will be no leak. The victim believes, pays, and then they write to him again. He pays again. He didn't pay once. They wrote to 5 friends, scared him. He paid again. And at some point, it all gets tiresome. That is, the person understands that they will be milked for life, and he says, do what you want. Something similar happens in relationships when a woman has no love for her husband, well, absolutely no love. She just starts to milk him for gifts, trips, new privileges, conditions in the relationship. You have to endure this, turn a blind eye to something. Well, the man explains to himself, okay, I'll give in a little more here. At least there won't be a divorce. In 90% of cases, a wife doesn't leave into thin air. Just think about it. From a logical, common sense, biological, psychological perspective, it's madness to leave a provider and go nowhere. Okay, when a girl is 23, no kids, many years ahead, then it's all clear. She'll find another one in a week, and that's it. New life. But if a woman is 35, 40 and also has children, if she leaves for nowhere, she risks being left with absolutely nothing. In almost all cases, there's a man nearby when a wife leaves her husband. For a wife to decide to leave for nowhere, well, that really takes some effort. It's important to understand that distancing is the most difficult part. Because you still love your wife, you dream of returning to the old way of life, well, or you're not afraid, you don't want to lose it. And in such a state, a man has only 2 modes. Either look at his wife with puppy eyes and believe in the best, or the second option, out of anger, a feeling of injustice, resentment, say things, and then regret it. That's it. What kind of distancing are we even talking about? It's impossible in such a state. You need strong willpower. The planning horizon should be a year, preferably 2. You must destroy within yourself the hope for some quick, accidental, sudden reconciliation. And on the other hand, just know that one day you will definitely have the opportunity to get back together. But how will you use that opportunity? That is, will you somehow blow it or not? Or maybe you won't even want to. But in any case, you need to focus on preparing yourself for that moment. That is, you must understand your wife very well, her needs, and how to manage the relationship. Well, of course, her perceived value needs to be lowered to an appropriate level. Thus, the process of distancing from a woman, as described in the text, is a complex multi-stage strategy aimed at restoring balance in relationships and increasing one's own perceived value. It requires patience, self-control, and a clear understanding of the psychological phases a woman goes through. Thank you all very much for watching.